Yeah.
Okay, so I thought I'd take up a topic that I think bothers or nags at everybody at some point. I'm probably biting up a little more than I can chew in 5 minutes, but that's fine. Never ambition has not been my shortcoming. And it's basically the question of how do we deal with evil, and how does the halacha deal with evil? And there are various strains in that, and one of them being obviously fighting back against evil. Another one, as weird as it sounds, sort of accepting evil. And I know that sounds strange, but we see it all the time where we say it's all part of Hashem's plan. And really, if we knew all of the facts, we'd see all the good in it. It comes with the Tova and those sort of ways of dealing with evil. And to kind of go through this, I'm going to run through some of the things that the Rav says. And I'm basically going to read a book called Out of the Whirlwind, which is a collection of essays and notes that they took from the attic. I think literally took from the attic. And I'm going to start with him quoting a Gemara from Kedushin about just some context. He's talking about the idea that if we knew all of the details and we had a sense of the wider plan, we really would see that everything is good and there really is no evil. So he quotes a Gemara from Kedushin. He says, to what are the righteous compared in this world? To a tree standing wholly in place of cleanness, but whose bough overhangs to a place of uncleanness. When the bough is lopped off, it is entirely in a place of cleanness. Thus the Holy One brings suffering upon the righteous in this world in order that they may inherit the future world. So he's saying, like, really, the Gemara is saying, really, like, yes, there's terrible things, but ultimately speaking, it's for the good. This is how they were Zechut Olam Haba. And the Rav says that the halacha has handled evil in this case in a radical approach, of course, simply by disposing it, which is radical. He says, in death and in suffering, one is born anew to true life, meaning like sometimes we say, like, in evil and the horrible things that happen, it's really ultimately for some sort of higher good, he says. And he says, he wonders, can such a metaphysic bring solace and comfort to modern man? He goes, we know the friends of Job or Eov were not successful in convincing Eov of the non-existence of evil. Can a rabbi be more successful? He said, I'll be frank with you, I do not know. And he goes on to say, I can stay with all candor that I personally have not been too successful in this. Although many people do seem to find that sort of solace in saying it's all really part of the plan. He then goes through the second theme in halacha of how halacha deals with evil. And he writes, is it not enough to glance at the laws of mourning in order to convince ourselves that halacha saw death as a dreadful fiend with whom no pact may be reached, no reconciliation is possible? It was not either, it being halacha, was not eager to find the rationale of evil and to convert negation into affirmation. It neither justified evil nor denied it. And he keeps on going. He says, first, evil does exist according to halacha, and evil is bad. The world in which we live is not free of deformities. Second, one must never acquiesce to evil, make peace with it, or condone its existence. Defiance of and act as opposition to evil, employing all means that God put at man's disposal, is the dominant norm in halacha, which is interesting. And he goes on to say that, sometimes you lose battles in a long war against evil, and you have to bear those battles, those losses with defeat, but ultimately we know that evil gets defeated. So really two questions. One is, how do we balance these two dynamics, these two very contradictory ways of handling evil? And then why do the Rav say that the latter one, the one where we actually go after evil and fight, is the dominant norm in halacha? So this is where it gets a little bit controversial. There's nothing really wrong with controversy. No one ever really got hurt from too much controversy, usually. Sometimes, not in this case. In this case, it's fine. I think it really comes down to a question of where is man's place in the cosmic order, if you want to put it this way. And it's a very hard question, but I'm trying to answer it very, very quickly. It's in Maisa, it's in action. Man was meant to act. Man was meant to make decisions. Man was meant to have bechira. Man was meant to take, I'll put it into very Chabanic terms, take, ethereal kedusha and bring it into the world and manifest in a dibur and ma'aseh and really make the world a certain way to the best of his ability. There is another strand or another dynamic, which is God's dynamic, where you could say God is in control of everything. It's really, what can I do? What can I possibly achieve? Really, God is in control. And there's a certain truth to that. And I'm not saying that's not true. Certainly you see themes like that in the Gemara. Especially or the Chovos Levavos talks about this also. But that's not where man is meant to live. Man was meant to live in a place where he's involved in action. And that's really the epitome of halacha, right? We don't just say it's good enough to be a good person in your heart. I'm not saying that's not a madrega. certainly is better than being evil. But we always, the halacha, the epitome of halacha is putting things into action. We don't just learn about lulav. We have to go shake a lulav, right? Action is where man is meant to exist. And I think that's why the Rav is saying that the dominant strand in the halacha when it comes to dealing with evil is actually going after it and actually fighting it. That's not to say that there's not another dynamic of reality, which is God's reality, that we have to be aware of and to acknowledge that it exists. And that from God's point of view, there's a plan for everything. God can only do good, and everything has an ultimate good to it. But I think, and this is where the controversy is, I think it's very important not to overstep that boundary and to know when it's appropriate and when it's not appropriate to live in God's dynamic, where the ultimate dynamic, where you have full context for everything. It's important to be aware of it, but I think the Rav is saying, I could put words in his mouth, is that's not where you should spend most of your time. It's something to be aware of. It's something to understand that exists. It can be comforting in certain moments, but the dominant strand is to take things head on, particularly in this case, evil, and to act, which I think we've seen over the past, 41, 42 days? I've lost count, which is terrible. We saw rallies in New York. We see people going around collecting things for soldiers. Whatever it is that you can possibly do, people are doing it, and they're fighting evil. And I wanted to say this, the point I want to end with, like Musar Haskell is like, whatever little thing you can do to fight evil is extremely important. It could be going out there and collecting tons and billions of dollars. It could be going on to social media and doing a social media post. The little things that we do against evil make a very big difference. And I'll say, again, a little controversially, that thinking about the questions of how could this happen, well, very natural, and why did this happen, how to fit into the God's overall plan, I don't know if now is the Zman. I think now is the Zman just to fight. And I think it's very, very important now, particularly as we get further away from the events of October 7th, to fight stronger than ever, because the evil that's out there against us as we get away from that tragedy is bigger and bigger. So we need to fight back stronger and stronger, and hopefully we'll be on Sliach in the very near future.
Shakah, very good. Thank you very much. Strong message. Okay, everybody, back here on Sunday night, same time, same place. Thank you very much, Mordi. Have a great Shabbos, everybody.
Shabbos.